Chapter 7 Interview Service Design. Jan Wardecki, Wardecki, is a service designer with a strategic mindset and solid facilitation and design research skills. He firmly believes that taking a holistic and human-centered approach is vital for businesses to thrive and grow. He works in the UX Center of Expertise at the Digital Transformation Department in the BNP Paribas Bank, Poland. He drives enterprise-scale design efforts for different business lines to identify and explore new opportunities to set the ground for digital transformation and innovation. Utilizing a combination of service design, user experience design, and co-creative methodologies, he delivers business value and customer satisfaction. He is also the co-founder of the Service Design Network Poland chapter and is an SDN-accredited service design practitioner. Debbie, how do you define customer centricity? Jan, it's a very holistic approach in which we are listening to customer needs and trying to respond to them, putting the customer at the center of our thinking. Debbie, before you were in service design, you were a product manager. Did you have that customer-centric view as a product manager? Jan, I gained it later when I realized that a well-organized backlog according to business needs will not necessarily give us product success. I was working on an internal product for students at a huge private university in Poland. It was an internal digital software platform for checking grades, engaging with students, and trying to build a huge digital marketing and communication platform. The KPIs were around reaching the students to let them know we have additional offers. Suddenly, I realized that we have to listen to the students. I realized that we must understand the needs by conducting user research and later usability testing. We discovered a lot of pain points during the research phase. We developed different personas based on university students' years. I also realized that we should combine business objectives with customer needs. It was eye-opening for the stakeholders, and for me. It was mind-blowing to think about the end users while building the software. Then I learned about customer-centric approaches, human-centered design, and other stuff. I took postgraduate studies in user experience design and service design. I learned that the most important thing is how we deliver the customer experience by organizing a whole company or organization around value. Then I became more interested in combining this with business processes. That was the first evolution of my career toward design. Debbie, there are probably many people listening to this book who are starting from a position of what the business wants. How can we make the numbers look good and stakeholders happy? They assume things will work out okay for the customer. Jan, exactly. I didn't want to be the guy dealing only with business needs. I took different approaches for a long time. I was trying to figure out how to use business analysis to understand customers. Business analysts get requirements from stakeholders, but in the end, they are often not achieving any results in terms of a good product, something that fulfills customers' needs but is also usable. Debbie, service design confuses many people. They think that UX designers design digital solutions, so service designers design the services we offer to customers. Jan, service design is the holistic and highly collaborative approach to generating value for both the service user and service provider through the service lifecycle. Service design uses the human-centered perspective. It's more about the business processes that mostly happen behind the scenes or behind the stage, as we say. User experience is more on the front stage. Service designers try to see the whole perspective, including digital and physical touchpoints. Debbie, a better term might be strategist. You're designing business process strategy, starting with mapping what the customers or potential customers experience now, both in the digital and non-digital worlds. Then you map how that can be improved. It's a very strategic job and not what most people think of when they hear design. Jan, I totally agree. It's not about wireframes, but about investigation and research within the organization. Service design and user experience design use many of the same tools, but for different purposes. Both work to define and discover the true user needs and pain points. But service designers would also like to discover the pain points for people inside the organization and discover, through the silos and departments in the organization, where we have bottlenecks. For example, we had a project at our company to transform bank branches. After they designed the new branch concept, developed it, and implemented it, employees and customers thought it was innovative. However, they had some difficulties navigating through the branch. They were used to the mental model of traditional branches developed through the years. Suddenly, the bank decided to break this mental model. Typically, you enter the branch and then you have a place to sit down. Then there are customer advisors, but we didn't have them in our branch. We had a huge open space where people were sitting wherever they wanted. It was almost like a cafe. So we had to investigate and conduct user research in the branch, a physical touch point. Our user experience specialists didn't have experience with ethnographic research, shadowing, and observation techniques. Debbie, was service design involved before the new branch was created? Jan, we didn't have our department yet, so we weren't involved in the process. Our department was created a year after the implementation, but then they asked us to work on it. We conducted research, we spoke with employees, and it was eye-opening because this branch was designed without thinking about the employees' needs or how they work. What do they do during service experiences with a customer? Another great example was when we followed the mortgage loan application process. We conducted ethnographic research with user observations and shadowing. We noticed that the application seemed to be held for around 2 weeks. That led us to realize that there were difficulties with communication across departments. Thanks to that research, we learned to improve not only the product, but also the processes, the back-office systems, and the whole experience. We sketched stakeholder maps, service blueprints, customer journeys, and tried to combine everything to answer user and employee needs. Debbie, it seems like a service design team or department is partners with everybody in the organization. They might work with CX, UX, or product managers. They might look at how a sales team does something or how the legal department gets involved. Where in the organization does a service design team usually sit? Jan, we are in the digital transformation department, but I'm also part of the UX team right now. My manager is the head of UX. We're responsible for changing the organization, but we have support from digital transformation. I think this is good, but I know that organizations around the world have different structures. Debbie, once you have that future state blueprint and you've mapped what an improved business process and customer experience will be like, it seems like what happens next is a change management adventure. How do you turn the blueprint into action? Jan, it depends if the organization is more waterfall or more agile. Thanks to the stakeholder map, we can define who owns products or touch points. When we need to change something in a digital product, we have to think about product owners or the product manager. We'll need buy-in from the person responsible for the channel or touch point. In Agile, we involve the Scrum Master as a coach to collaborate on defining what will be changed. This will also affect the roadmap. We might need to work with a process team or the process owner. Sometimes we have to start with a minimum valuable product or minimum valuable service. After creating our service blueprints, we often double-check them with business analysts, IT architects, and others from many different departments to ensure that it's a good map. Different departments might describe this process entirely differently. We check this in a collaborative workshop. We'll also consider who should be involved in the implementation plan of our future state service blueprint. How will we combine our initiatives into current organization roadmaps? It's not like we have a blueprint and it's done. We divide changes into phases. What should we do in the first phase? Improve the customer experience in the front stage? Or should we think about the backstage? We use typical prioritization approaches and workshops. We also need to be in line with KPIs. It's a very complicated process. That's why we are part of the transformation department. Debbie, I wonder if some people will hear this and say, "This sounds great, but it sounds like it takes forever." Jan, it depends on the product and organization. It depends on what we find after framing the problem from multiple angles, which is the first phase. The second phase is initial research. After that, we can estimate the time that it will take. For example, if we know that there is a very complex product and we'll need to deal with different departments, we create hypotheses about the product and then we can estimate time. Maybe a very simple product or process takes 2 weeks. Debbie, I've often found that even when we think we know the problem, after the research, sometimes the problem looks very different, or it's a different problem. Do you ever find that after you research, you have to look back at the problem and say, "Hold on, we thought we had the problem defined, but it's a whole other animal"? Jan, that is why we often reframe the problem after the research phase. Debbie, the first 3 phases of your work might be consider the problem or challenge, research, and redefine the problem. During this, you create current and future state service blueprints. What phase comes next? Jan, brainstorming and prototyping, depending on the situation or project. Sometimes after the research phase, we find some quick wins. Sometimes we go through a whole process like Double Diamond, where we will have brainstorming, prototyping, testing, and implementation. Debbie, people sometimes think of prototyping as either a physical object, like we're going to make a model of a car we want to build, or a digital prototype, where it's a UX prototype or something coded. What other types of prototypes might a service designer use? Jan, when we were investigating those bank branches and physical touchpoints, we considered that one element we could change to create better experiences was the person greeting guests in the front of the branch. The prototype could even be the process. We can imagine these changes and then check with the internal person who owns this touchpoint and ask whether it's possible to implement our ideas into their services. I remember a situation when we suggested a different approach for the employee, like how to talk about bank services with customers. The sky's the limit, or the industry is the limit. Debbie, I hope people listening to this book will become interested in and excited about service design and service designers and open jobs. How do you assess if someone's good at service design? Jan, this is the funny part because it's often invisible work. First, the person should have competencies in facilitation and communication. Facilitation is a very important skill, but it can be hard to assess in an interview. They need to be great at gathering information, analytical thinking, and critical thinking. They also need to be able to do visualization using service blueprints. They need to show how they conduct research. These are generally the skills. Candidates should be able to show their blueprints, recommendations, and the impact on the organization. Sometimes, due to NDAs, they can't show all of their work or speak to specifics, but they should be able to talk about or show some of their process, the main challenges, and the impact of the project. It's all about the strategy. You could also ask what tools they use or how they use workshops. Debbie, it sounds like a job that's very heavy on research and strategy, and then the facilitation piece drives some of the collaboration. You're bringing together so many different departments and domains in an organization who will have to do some tough looking in the mirror and possibly hear that what they're doing is not good for themselves, the customers, or the company. The facilitator probably has to help them get into a better mindset or position to be open to the change. Jan, exactly. The crucial role is gathering people in one place if possible. It's about connecting the dots in an organization. It's much more than thinking about one solution. You have to consider the whole organization.